Other meal deals leave you craving more.
But wait, there's Marco's.
Marco's Pizza gives you more with our new More menu. More pizza, savory sides, decadent desserts, and more. Starting at just $5 each when you spend $7.99 or more. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new breadsticks.
Oh yeah. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new 6-piece wings.
Try Marco's.
But wait, new chocolate Cinnasquares.
We're gonna need more airtime. Minimum spend required. Use code More menu with $7.99 minimum spend or code Get More with $8.99 minimum spend. Tiered prices higher at certain locations. Valid on the More menu only. Restrictions apply.
Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is Christianity from a worldview. Christianity from a worldview. You know, I recently heard President Trump's speech at the Bible Museum in DC, and he mentioned the rise in anti-Christian bias. And I thought that was interesting because I've certainly felt like we've been targeted for a while now, but not so much physically as much as morally and ethically. And it has never felt so hard to get support for just simply doing the right thing. You know, I'm not referring to this newfound understanding of you're right or you're wrong, and you hear people say things like my truth or this is what I believe. No. I'm referring to the basics of rights and wrongs, like following the law as it's written, not as one may wish to interpret it, or being kind to others even if you disagree. You know, common decency seems to be at an all-time low. From the tragic shooting at Minnesota's Catholic school, where 2 children lost their lives and many others were wounded, to the mass shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, on March 27, 2023, that was done by the 28-year-old Aiden Hale, a transgender and former student of the school, who carried out that deadly attack. You know, Hale tragically murdered 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults before being shot and killed by the Nashville Police Department. You know, times are certainly changing. Things are certainly getting worse and worse, or at least it feels that way. And unfortunately, when you hear about these types of events, it typically falls into these 2 political categories of mental health or gun control. But I believe we are neglecting the issue that lies underneath, or in some cases, directly in front of us. Until today, when President Trump spoke about anti-Christian bias. Unfortunately, this bias is not synonymous to our country alone. It's taking place all around the world in the shadows of the night, and in most cases, right under our noses. For many of us, Christians or fellow followers of Christ, this is not anything new or unexpected. It's quite the contrary. You see, in the Bible, it makes it very clear how we're going to be treated for his sake. John 16:33 in the ESV says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. And in the world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. And unless you are sitting under a pastor or a teacher who believes that our time in this world is meant to be easygoing, you have probably already embraced the fact that trials and challenges will come. However, while there are some who have taken hold of this, there are many who still believe that God is our personal genie in the bottle, here to answer all of our prayers according to their will and not his will. And as a result, we have become more driven to vibes and energies and far away from the Bible and even further away from a relationship with God. But we need to be on our game as believers now more than ever. But what does this anti-Christian bias look like? Well, on today's show, I'm going to talk about some of the anti-Christian biases that are taking place globally and whether Christianity is really embraced in other countries, particularly the countries that say that they do. But first, I want to set a few records straight. So as a believer and a Christian, I absolutely believe in spiritual freedom. While I do not share the faith of others, I am 100% a Christian, a believer in Jesus Christ. But the government should not be a theocracy. It shouldn't demand that people worship and follow whatever religion they decide to set if they're not doing so willingly. Because God gave us free will to choose to follow him. Unfortunately, some will not. He did not demand that we follow him. He didn't make it a mandate. He said to choose me. Choose ye this day who you will serve. So this notion that Christianity should be the religion of the government is man-made. It's not a mandate. Next, we have to look at what happens when we do welcome theocracies and live under one. This has been the case for decades in parts of the Middle East, and now we're seeing a similar takeover in Britain and surrounding areas. But how did it happen? You see, the landscape of Islam in Britain has undergone significant changes over the past decade. Islamist activity in Britain has increased since 1989. External states and organizations have played a significant role in shaping the British Islam. These influences have impacted religions and religious life, as well as political life, facilitating the establishment of institutions and the emergence of theological streams. Today, the Muslim population in the UK is approximately 3.9 million, representing 6.5% of the total population. And this was a significant increase from 2.7 million, which was 4.9% in 2011. Primarily originating from the Indian subcontinent, meaning India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, there's been a wave of migration driven by legislation and political upheavals, which have contributed to this community's growth. And the community tends to be more youthful, as many are being born in the UK. And settlements are heavily concentrated in London and Yorkshire and Manchester. There has been several foreign influences shaping the British Islam. Some factors adopt confrontational and anti-Western and separatist ideology and have been involved in the radicalization of activities. These extremist groups focus on recruiting youth, promoting anti-Semitic and anti-Western sentiments. Factors like social and economic exclusion, social isolation, particularly in northern towns, and a victimhood mentality may foster this radicalization even more. Today I read a post that was a bit alarming, if not a lot alarming. And if it's true, it's something we really need to pay attention to. It said that today there are Muslim-only sections in the UK. That 78% of the Muslim women there that are refugees do not work. And 68% of the men and male refugees do not work. 8 out of 10 of the Muslims are on free government housing. That many of the schools are now requiring halal for lunches. And that the mayors of London and Sheffield and Blackburn, Oxford and Luton and Oldham are all Muslim. And to top it off, their new Home Secretary of the UK, who is in charge of national security, counterterrorism, policing, and immigration, is a Pakistani Muslim. So having all this information, I think it's safe to say that it has become increasingly important to understand how Christianity is seen on the main stage, meaning globally. I think it's time that we pay attention to what's really happening in all these countries. I think it's also time to look at whether or not we're seeing a rise in these different Islamic and Muslim groups that are coming in and setting up shop and pushing their ideology, as to whether or not that's freedom of religion or the force of theocracy. Like, what are we doing? What's happening? Are they allowing Christians to worship freely, or are they harassing? However, I think it's important to note that Christianity is among those religions that believe that everyone has the right to choose what they want to believe, whether it be right or wrong. I have to note, for the sake of this discussion, I do have a bias as well. My bias is towards Christianity, not anti-Christianity. It's towards Christianity because I truly believe that we are worshiping the true and living God. So you have to know that going into this discussion. However, I'm going to do my best to just simply highlight the facts as to where Christianity stands in some of these other countries. So after the break, it's time to look at some of these perspectives, from China to Africa to right here in America. Don't leave the table. More of the Janelle King Show right after the break. You're listening to the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Other meal deals leave you craving more?
But wait, there's Marco's.
Marco's Pizza gives you more with our new More menu. More pizza, savory sides, decadent desserts, and more. Starting at just $5 each when you spend $7.99 or more. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new breadsticks.
Oh yeah. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new 6-piece wings.
Try Marco's.
But wait, new chocolate Cinesquares.
We're gonna need more airtime. Minimum spend required. Use code More menu with $7.99 minimum spend or code Get More with $8.99 minimum spend. Tiered prices higher at certain locations. Valid on the More menu only. Restrictions apply.
Buying a car shouldn't be a mystery. Hi, I'm Stacey Ellis, Vice President of the Jim Ellis Automotive Group. At Jim Ellis, we believe in complete transparency because you deserve to know exactly what you're getting. That's why we show you all the numbers, no hidden fees, no surprises. We explain every option clearly so you can make the right decision with confidence. And if you ever have questions, we have answers. Our team is here to guide you, making sure you're informed and in control every step of the way. At Jim Ellis Automotive, we don't want to sell you just any car. We want to help you buy the right car, because doing the right thing for you is what matters most to us. Experience car buying the way it should be, honest, straightforward, and built around you. And don't forget, Jim Ellis buys cars too. It's the safe and easy way to get maximum value for your car. To get started, visit one of our 21 convenient locations across Metro Atlanta or shop online at jimellis.com. The quick, easy, and convenient way to search and compare more than 5,500 cars, trucks, and SUVs. Jim Ellis Automotive, where you can always expect the best.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is Christianity from the world view. How the world is viewing Christianity and whether or not something is going down, because something is changing. And I recently listened to President Trump's speech at the Bible Museum in D.C., and he highlighted that there is a rise in anti-Christian bias. And that struck a chord with me because I felt for some time that we've been targeted. Not necessarily physically, but certainly morally and ethically. Now we're starting to see it physically, and we're starting to see that increase, and it's become increasingly difficult to get support for doing what is right. What's just plain common decency, like following the law as it's written or being kind to others despite disagreements. Sadly, it seems that respect and civility is at an all-time low. And as I mentioned before, we've seen so many tragic events, like the most recent shooting at the Minnesota Catholic school by the transgender, where 2 children lost their lives while praying. And the deadly attack at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, carried out by a former student who is now transgender. And these instances often get framed as mental health or gun control problems, but I believe that they also reflect a deeper issue, mainly the growing anti-Christian bias that President Trump recently addressed. And unfortunately, this bias is not isolated to America. It's happening around the world, often in the shadows and sometimes right under our noses. For those of us who follow Christ, this isn't anything new. The Bible clearly warns us about how we're going to be treated. It talks about it in John 16:33, which reminds us that in this world there will be tribulation. But take heart, because I've overcome the world. Yet many still see God as a personal genie, expecting him to answer prayers according to their will rather than his. And this mindset has shifted us away from a true relationship with God and have driven us towards vibes and energies and feelings, drifting further and further away from biblical truth. Now more than ever, we have to be alert as believers. So what does this anti-Christian bias look like in today's world? Well, as I discussed a little bit during my previous segment, that you have to take Britain, for example. The landscape in Islam there has changed dramatically past decades. Today, Britain's Muslim population is at 3.9 million, making up 6.5% of their total population, and many of them are arriving from the Indian continent due to migration waves and driven by legislation and other upheavals. However, there's alarming reports that suggest that Muslim women refugees don't work, along with 68% of men. A significant portion of the community is now relying on government housing, and many of the local leaders are now Muslim, including the mayors of major cities like London and Sheffield. And then they also have a home secretary who's responsible for immigration and national security, who's also Muslim. The schools are now offering halal for lunches and reflecting on a shift in a community demographic. This just raised questions about integration and cultural influence and whether or not we are still allowing freedom of religion or if we are starting to take over things. And I saw a video of a gentleman who was walking through one of the Muslim-only communities, and he was accosted and basically was treated very rudely. And I'm just trying to understand what's happening. I mean, because all of this underscores the importance of understanding how Christianity is perceived and treated on a global stage today. And as we see trends of increasing religious influence, both good and bad, we need to be aware of a bigger picture. And that's that as a Christian, I believe that it is the true faith. And I do believe that Jesus is the only true and living God. And I do wish to see that all men turn to God and that no man perishes. But I also understand that we support free will. And it's a choice to choose God. And what we're seeing globally with this huge Muslim push isn't choice, but it's becoming a demand in a form of theocracy. That's not okay. So let's continue to look at how Christianity is viewed in other countries and how there are many of us who wish to see it uprooted. Let's start with China. I remember wanting to speak with a friend who lived over there, and she was teaching English to the students. And she made it very clear to me when we were messaging that we're not to talk about certain subjects when we got on our Zoom call. Primarily the government, of course, but I had to also be careful about how much religion I was discussing with her. And at one point, we had to switch to voice notes because there was fear that her social media was being spied on, because that's very common in the communist China. So I know that communism in China is not anything close to freedom or the freedom many of the communists here in America believe exists. I hate when I hear people say things like, oh, the reason why communism didn't work in the past is because they didn't do it right. But yet you're doing the same thing that they were doing. So what makes it different? Because the voice changed? Now, while it's possible to practice Christianity in China, the Chinese government enforces strict regulations and restrictions on religious activities. China officially recognizes only 5 religions, and Christianity happens to be one of them. Then there's Islam, Catholicism, Taoism, Buddhism. However, The government keeps a close watch on how these religions are practiced and is to ensure that they align with state policy, because the real religion under communism is government. You see, Christians are required to worship in government-approved churches in China, known as patriotic churches. For Protestants, these are overseen by the three self-patriotic movement. And for Catholics, they're overseen by the Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association. These churches are tightly controlled by the CCP. And God forbid you have an underground or a house church that operates outside of government oversight, because attending these unregistered churches is technically illegal. And the participants can face harassment, detention, or even persecution. Religious education and gatherings are monitored by authorities. Activities considered politically sensitive or outside the approved doctrine are prohibited, limiting religious freedom. Foreign influence is strongly restricted. Foreign missionaries, religious literature, and materials promoting outside influence are discouraged or banned. There are also restrictions on religious symbols and practices, so crosses and icons are sometimes removed from churches. And evangelism and trying to actually go out and win souls is regulated or prevented, all to prevent what the government views as excessive or unapproved preaching. So Chinese Christians who worship outside the official churches or openly criticize government policies risk detention or harassment. Despite these obstacles, though, many Christians continue practicing their faith discreetly, often in secret. But they say Christianity is welcome, but not authentic Christianity, the government's form of Christianity. And when it comes to the Bible, we find even more restrictions. The CCP imposes strict restrictions on the Bible and its distribution. The sale and distribution of Bibles are tightly controlled. Officially, Bibles are only available through government-authorized churches and publishers. Unapproved or underground copies are illegal. And the CCP censors religious content. Certain passages or references that are deemed politically sensitive or challenging to communist ideology are removed or altered. Access to the Bible is often restricted in regions where religious activities is heavily monitored. Many online sources where people might find unapproved versions of the Bible is blocked or censored. The government has a history of confiscating or banning or destroying Bibles that are imported or printed outside of their authority. At the same time, the CCP restricts religious education that promotes Bible teachings outside approved religious institutions. Teaching or sharing the Bible in illegal gatherings is forbidden. Pastors or religious leaders are often pressured or coerced into promoting state-approved interpretations of the Bible, and some face detention or arrest if they resist. But don't take my word for it.
Legal to be a Christian in China, but it's a catch-22 situation for Christians who want to worship God in a church. There are almost 6,500 registered churches in China, and the CCP mandates that all of them use only hymns that align with their communist principles. Congregants must stand to sing the national anthem and offer praise to the Communist Party before beginning their worship. The sermons must be reviewed and approved by government officials in advance, with any message lacking socialist themes subject to censorship. In addition, all registered churches are required to install facial recognition cameras, including at the pulpit, to allow the government to monitor individuals who dare to attend. In 2023, the CCP rewrote portions of the Bible to align with the party's doctrine. In the Gospel of John, where Jesus tells the crowd, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone," the CCP's version twists the narrative. Jesus himself stones the woman to death to underscore the party's message of zero tolerance for crime. Since 2018, the Bible has been available only in government-controlled churches, which raises a haunting question. If these are the only places the Bible is legally available, and those Bibles are altered, do Christians in China now have access only to the CCP's version of Scripture? So here is the catch-22. Attend a state-approved church and risk being indoctrinated with CCP-altered teachings, or worship in an underground, God-centered fellowship and risk being harassed, arrested, or locked up.
So the next time you read your Bible freely in America, think about our brothers and sisters in China. You have to know that there are so many places where Christianity is either banned, highly restricted, or discouraged, such as North Korea, Afghanistan, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Iran, Brunei, Algeria, Egypt, and many more. But I haven't seen anything like what is happening in parts of Africa. In Libya, Christianity is virtually banned, and practicing it openly can result in arrests or even violence. The small Christian community faces significant risk, especially for conversions or worship outside of approved spaces. Then we have Nigeria. Right here in 2025, Christians are being murdered for their faith. On September 7th of 2025, just this month, deadly clashes erupted across Nigeria involving security forces, Islamic fighters linked to crime gangs and terror groups. At least 7 Christians were killed. Late Friday, September 6th, when armed bandits attacked the village of Magnagen Wando. The raid happened between 11 p.m. and midnight. And a local evangelist, Paul Youngus, confirmed the victims were all Christians. So here we have Islamic terror groups attacking specifically Christians. Authorities credited the Community Watch Corps to repelling some of the attack, but bandits later ambushed and shot at those fleeing to the hospital, burning their vehicles in the process. Villagers fought back against these bandits, killing at least 15 attackers, freeing kidnapped victims, and rescuing stolen cattle. But in northeast Nigeria, the Boko Haram terrorists killed at least 63 people in the Darajama village, including soldiers and civilians. The attack targeted recent settlers who had moved there after previous violence, and the governor condemned the massacre, calling it a crime against humanity. Right groups warn that Christians are disproportionately targeted, with an estimate of 5,000 killed annually. Overall, what is it really like to be a Christian in Nigeria? Some of you may say, these were just Islamic terror groups. It doesn't mean that Christianity isn't banned in Nigeria. So what is it really like? Well, Christianity is officially recognized, but in practice, Christians face numerous restrictions and challenges, especially in certain religions, in certain regions. One major restriction is anti-conversion laws, particularly in the northern states where Islamic law influences policy. What does that mean by anti-conversion? These laws make it difficult for individuals to convert or practice Christianity openly. So switching from Islam to Christianity is heavily restricted. And evangelism is often limited as well. Public sharing of faith can lead to harassment, violence, or even arrest. Building new churches isn't easy either. Many local governments impose bans or strict regulations on church construction, particularly in the north, restricting Christian worship spaces. Christians often face social, political, and economic barriers with limited access to employment and education in some regions. Then there are blasphemy laws. that are also used to target Christians. Like accusations can lead to detention or legal charges, mostly in areas where Islamic laws are enforced. So God forbid you're a Christian and you say that Jesus is the only true and living God, now you're going to have to face blasphemy laws. And as I just explained, churches and Christian communities are targeted. They're attacked. They're killed. And threats are common. Not to mention, protection from authority is often lacking or ineffective. So having a worldview of Christianity, particularly in countries who embrace communism, is extremely important. Unfortunately, we have all seen a rise of socialism and communistic support in America. This is often exposed politically or socially, but not so much spiritually. I remember when there was a debate within the Democrat Party about removing the closer of a prayer in Jesus' name. And then I remember attending a Republican event where there were many leaders from a variety of different religious groups who all prayed individually in an attempt to welcome all religions. So there is a movement taking place on the religious front. But what will it truly look like if communism began to take root in America for Christians? Because if communism really did take root, Christianity as we know is going to change. Christianity under communism often faces severe restrictions and suppression. Public church services are either banned or heavily monitored. So if you're listening to me while heading to church this morning, this is a good time to pause and have gratitude for the freedom to simply be able to drive to church service. Because many Christians would find themselves practicing in secret or in underground churches to avoid persecution should communism rise more and more in this country. Religious leaders like your current pastor would be persecuted or imprisoned or forced to operate under state control. Kind of like what we saw during COVID, when liquor stores were able to operate freely, but church leaders faced possible imprisonment. The government may appoint or approve church leaders, undermining the independence of religious institutions. Here's another one. Say goodbye to those beautiful crosses that you're currently wearing around your neck, because displays of Christian symbols, crosses, and Bibles will be frequently forbidden or destroyed. Religious literature like your Bible will be censored or destroyed. Teaching or sharing the Christian faith will be banned altogether, especially among youth, in order to prevent religious influence from taking hold. I would say we have gotten a taste of this when prayer was removed from our schools. Imagine pulling up to your church and finding it boarded up or padlocked. That is what you would expect under communism. Numerous churches will be shut down, demolished, or repurposed for secular use. Then we can also look forward to forced conformity, where the state promotes atheism and may require attendance at anti-religion propaganda sessions, discouraging any public religion expression. But what are some of the subtle signs of communistic oppression on religion that can be hard to detect but is already here? How about fewer public displays of faith, less church attendance? We are already seeing a decline in church attendance. Many are young people who are opting to be more spiritual rather than have a relationship with God. You can also expect fewer religious symbols out of fear. Other subtle changes is seeing more and more schools promote secular or strictly state-approved ideology. What about these trans teachers and these drag queen story times? State-approved ideology. Ultimately leaving little room or no room at all for Christian teaching. The replacing and sidelining of church leaders and government officials, or silencing religious voices in society, is another subtle change. I think about this when I see the increase in these so-called pastors or teachers who are out here pushing social justice warring rather than the Bible. Case in point, Raphael Warnock. Jamal Bryant, Al Sharpton. Lastly, the increase of censorship and propaganda, media and officials messaging depicting religion as outdated, particularly Christianity, as being, women being barefoot and pregnant and, oppressed, and as Christianity being a form of superstitions or dangerous as a whole, minimizing its role in society. Recently, we saw Jen Psaki, Biden's former press secretary, write on X that prayer wasn't needed. It wasn't enough. When prayer is the cornerstone of our faith, it's always enough. But according to Jen Psaki, it's not. In communist countries, Christianity is often met with both overt and subtle forms of suppression, ranging from outright bans and destruction to social marginalization and propaganda. And it's scary that we're currently seeing a lot of this right now. And as I bring this discussion to a close, after the break, I'm going to share my personal story and discuss why I am deeply concerned about our younger generation and its lack of faith, along with why I believe we are seeing such a sharp disinterest in Christianity, particularly when it comes to our future generations. We're almost finished. Don't leave the table. You're listening to The Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Other meal deals leave you craving more?
But wait, there's Marco's.
Marco's Pizza gives you more with our new More menu. More pizza, savory sides, decadent desserts, and more. Starting at just $5 each when you spend $7.99 or more. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new breadsticks.
Oh, yeah. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new 6-piece wings.
Try Marco's.
But wait, new chocolate Cinesquares.
We're gonna need more airtime. Minimum spend required. Use code More menu with $7.99 minimum spend or code Get More with $8.99 minimum spend. Tiered prices higher at certain locations. Valid on the More menu only. Restrictions apply.
Buying a car shouldn't be a mystery. Hi, I'm Stacey Ellis, Vice President of the Jim Ellis Automotive Group. At Jim Ellis, we believe in complete transparency because you deserve to know exactly what you're getting. That's why we show you all the numbers, no hidden fees, no surprises. We explain every option clearly so you can make the right decision with confidence. And if you ever have questions, we have answers. Our team is here to guide you, making sure you're informed and in control every step of the way. At Jim Ellis Automotive, we don't want to sell you just any car. We want to help you buy the right car, because doing the right thing for you is what matters most to us. Experience car buying the way it should be. Honest, straightforward, and built around you. And don't forget, Jim Ellis buys cars too. It's the safe and easy way to get maximum value for your car. To get started, visit one of our 21 convenient locations across Metro Atlanta or shop online at jimellis.com. The quick, easy, and convenient way to search and compare more than 5,500 cars, trucks, and SUVs. Jim Ellis Automotive, where you can always expect the best.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3. This is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is Christianity from a worldview. I decided to talk about this because recently I heard President Trump talk about the rising anti-Christian bias, and it really struck a chord with me because many of us do feel targeted, but not just physically, but morally and ethically. It's now starting to grow to physical attacks at these schools, and it's increasingly difficult to support what's right or stand for faith and kindness in today's culture. But it isn't just happening in America. It's happening around the world, from China to Nigeria to North Korea. Christians are facing persecution, imprisonment, or even death. Churches are shutting down. Bibles are being censored. Believers are being forced underground and their freedoms are taken away. Even subtly, signs are already here. Declining church attendance, silenced voices in society, censorship in media, all warning us of what's possible if we don't stand firm. Because understanding how Christians are persecuted worldwide reminds us of how precious and how fragile our religious freedom truly is. We need to protect it. While it's not completely gone, it's certainly slipping away, especially with our younger generation. Long are the days when grandma will walk in the room and say, "Get dressed, we're heading to church." Long are the days when you have a section of clothing in your closet that were your church clothes. And if you know me, or you met me, it wouldn't be hard to believe that that was my favorite section of the closet, because that's where all my pretty dresses were. And I love dresses. But nonetheless, church among millennials and Gen Zers are at an all-time low. As a recent study shows, around 35 to 40% of millennials who are born between 1981 and 1996 identify as religiously unaffiliated or call themselves nuns. Not the nuns like the Catholic nuns, the NONES nuns, which includes atheists, agnostics, and those who do not have a particular religious identity. Many of these are former or lapsed churchgoers. And then when you look at the Generation Z, which are born between 1997 and 2012, the percentage is higher, with roughly 50% or more identifying as nuns, NONES, or rejecting organized religion altogether. Overall, closer to half or more of millennials and Gen Zers are rejecting or not participating in traditional church life, highlighting a significant cultural shift away from religious institutions. But why is this happening? Well, I want to share my personal story. And by sharing my story, I pray that it will help you when it comes to understanding the millennial and the Gen Zers in your life. You see, I was raised in a deeply spiritual home with deeply spiritual parents. They taught us the Bible within the context of using it as a moral guide and a way of securing my ticket to eternal life. It was about being on the right side of decisions and living, but it didn't lead to or promote a glamorous life. It wasn't about having a blissful experience on earth. It was quite the contrary. It was more about enduring until the end. So it wasn't too much of a surprise when my relationship shifted a bit when I went to college and I was introduced to the prosperity teaching and the spiritual guidance that favored having heaven on earth, or at least a piece of it. Now that was a little bit more intriguing to me. And as a result, I found myself shifting from the internal life perspective to the self-motivated self-development perspective. In walked The Secret, the movie and the book, and other literature that introduced me to New Age. But of course, I didn't think it was New Age. I thought it was me finding religious balance, securing my spot in heaven and on earth. But it was not that. Slowly, I started drifting further and further away from God and closer to self. I was carrying stones and reading horoscopes and setting up altars with ancestors' pictures, and it just led me down this really dark path, both in theory and in my decisions. And I'm so grateful to God that He intervened when He did. Like authentic Christianity, I found myself lost and disappointed, so I turned to the Bible. I then met my husband, Kelvin, who led me all the way back to Christ, the Christ of eternity, the Christ that teaches against self-worship. And now I understand exactly why. You see, the rise of New Age spirituality that is gripping our younger generation is pulling people away from the true faith of Christianity. It's easy to get caught up in the message of self-love and self-care and finding eternal peace. Things that on the surface seem positive. But if we're not careful, this focus can become a distraction, leading us further from God rather than closer to Him. You see, the world today tells us that everything begins and ends with ourselves, that our happiness, our fulfillment, and peace comes from within. It promotes the idea that we are little gods and that our feelings and our desires should take center stage. But this way of thinking is dangerous, and it subtly replaces the biblical truth that true peace and purpose comes from Christ and Christ alone. When we rely solely on self-love, we overlook the importance of surrendering to God's plan and trusting His will. Most importantly, accepting that His will may not be our will. We forget that true healing and strength and identity is found in Jesus, who said in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. This focus on self can breed arrogance, confusion, and even despair because it pushes us to depend on our own strength, which is very limited and fragile. And our young people are more depressed, more discouraged than ever. It leaves many people feeling empty and lost like I was feeling, searching for a meaning, all in the wrong places. As Christians, we are called to walk humbly before God, to seek his kingdom first, and to love others. When we veer from that, replacing God's word with man's ideas, we open ourselves up to deception and spiritual harm. Our true identity, our purpose, our peace is only found in Christ. And if you're listening and you find yourself asking questions like, why is this happening to me? Why am I so disappointed? Why are so many disappointments happening? Why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so anxious? I urge you to start by shifting your focus from yourself and to find gratitude, even if it's something as simple as being grateful for the chance to change things around. Look for opportunities to be grateful. There's so many around us. Then begin reading the Bible. I recommend reading one proverb a day. There's 31, I believe, proverbs. 31. And try to follow what you're reading. Lastly, remember that you didn't get here overnight, so don't expect it to change overnight. Spend time with God and take this journey with the Lord. And if you're a parent or a friend or a loved one, pray for your loved one that they will experience the peace of God that surpasses all of their understanding and that they will begin to walk down a path that he has set. I will pray with you. Let us not be swayed by the fleeting promises of the world. Instead, let's keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. His love is enough, and his truth is eternal. Until next time, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth.
Other meal deals leave you craving more?
But wait, there's Marco's.
Marco's Pizza gives you more with our new More menu. More pizza, savory sides, decadent desserts, and more. Starting at just $5 each when you spend $7.99 or more. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new breadsticks.
Oh yeah. Try Marco's More menu.
But wait, new 6-piece wings.
Try Marco's.
But wait, new chocolate Cinesquares.
We're gonna need more airtime. Minimum spend required. Use code More menu with $7.99 minimum spend or code Get More with $8.99 minimum spend. Tiered prices higher at certain locations. Valid on the More menu only. Restrictions apply.
Buying a car shouldn't be a mystery. Hi, I'm Stacey Ellis, Vice President of the Jim Ellis Automotive Group. At Jim Ellis, we believe in complete transparency because you deserve to know exactly what you're getting. That's why we show you all the numbers, no hidden fees, no surprises. We explain every option clearly so you can make the right decision with confidence. And if you ever have questions, we have answers. Our team is here to guide you, making sure you're informed and in control every step of the way. At Jim Ellis Automotive, we don't want to sell you just any car. We want to help you buy the right car because doing the right thing for you is what matters most to us. Experience car buying the way it should be. Honest, straightforward, and built around you. And don't forget, Jim Ellis buys cars too. It's the safe and easy way to get maximum value for your car. To get started, visit one of our 21 convenient locations across Metro Atlanta or shop online at jimellis.com. The quick, easy, and convenient way to search and compare more than 5,500 cars, trucks, and SUVs. Jim Ellis Automotive, where you can always expect the best.